January 20. Board to order. I'll turn things over to Mr. McBroom for the city.
Good afternoon. The Metropolitan Short-Term Rental Board of Appeals is now in session for the regularly scheduled meeting of January 25th, 2023. I'm Bonnell McBroom III, STRP Chief at Metro Codes, and I will be presenting the cases to the board for review in today's public hearing. At this time, I would ask anyone to either turn off their cell phones or put them on silence as not to disrupt today's meeting. The procedure will be for staff to introduce the case record. At the conclusion of our presentation, the appellant will present their case to the board along with any person in support. If there is opposition to the case, the board will then hear from those parties. After the opposition has presented their testimony, the appellant will have a period for rebuttal. The board in their rules provides the appellant in cases without opposition 5 minutes to present their case. In a contested case, the board provides 10 minutes for each side to present their testimony. Should the appellant wish to provide rebuttal testimony, the appellant should reserve some of their allotted 10 minutes for rebuttal. The Metro Code requires that these proceedings be taped. Therefore, it is imperative that anyone addressing the board come forward, speak into the microphone, identify yourself, and then make your presentation. It should be noted that if it is found that anyone has presented false or misleading testimony to the board that would have affected the board's decision, any approval may be revoked at a later date by means of a show cause hearing. The board will go through the cases set for public hearing today. After both sides of the case presentations are made, the board will discuss and vote on the case. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases before us today under the provisions as outlined in Section 6.28.035 of the Metropolitan Code. The code requires 4 members of the 7-member board to be present to constitute a quorum. The board rules require a majority vote in the affirmative for the members present to grant the appellant's application. In the event the majority vote is not achieved, the case will remain on the board's agenda for the next regularly scheduled public hearing. Applications that fail to receive a majority affirmative vote at the next regularly scheduled public hearing shall be deemed denied by operation of law. The appellant or any aggrieved property owner may request a rehearing within 60 days of this public hearing. Further, the appellant or any aggrieved property owner may also appeal the board's decision to the Chancery Court within the same 60-day period. After that time has elapsed, the board's decision becomes final and no further action can be taken. If you are an appellant and your case is granted, it will be necessary for you to obtain the permit for which you have applied. It should be noted that the permit must be obtained within 2 years of the board's approval to remain valid. I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all appellants have been notified by certified mail as required by the code, and all affected property owners have been notified, and the legal notification sign requirements have been met as required by the code. This time we would ask if there are any elected officials present. Seeing none, we'll proceed. I believe that we've established that the appellant is present today. Is there opposition present to this case? All right, the case on the docket before us today is STR 2023-49, Seth Maxwell, 2109 Hermosa Street. We'll have 10 minutes for each side to make their presentation. Again, the appellant should reserve time for rebuttal if you wish to rebut. This owner-occupied permit was canceled. The reason being the STR is not the principal or primary residence of the owner or permit holder as deemed by the zoning administrator. This is governed by BL 2020-187, and the decision of the board is whether or not the zoning administrator erred in the cancellation of the permit. RS5 zoning district. On February 11th of 2020, the appellant, Mr. Maxwell, purchased 2109 Hermosa Street. The deed of trust was signed by the appellant, notarized in Los Angeles, California. October 14th, 2020, the owner-occupied STRP permit application was initiated. The appellant's permit application package included a proof of insurance document which contained a section labeled Important Rating Information with the occupancy of the property listed as vacation and short term. October 29th, 2020, the permit was issued. The verification of residence was bank statement and Tennessee driver's license. The Davidson County Clerk's Office does not show a record of an automobile for the appellant having been registered in the county. On May 11th, 2021, a complaint was submitted on the Nashville hub, and the complaint read as follows. I am a neighbor nearby. I never see any owner around, just party group during weekends. But this unit has an owner-occupied permit. After looking up the owner's name and phone number online, I believe the unit is owned by an out-of-state investor. And then there's a link to a website provided. And then someone please investigate and stop it. Inspector John Phelps opened an investigation. Initially, he found several addresses associated with Mr. Maxwell. And these could be addresses for businesses, homes, rental properties, apartments, condos, and or other real estate, and had to be investigated. Inspector Phelps found the following. 5478 Wilshire Boulevard, and there's a photo for that included in your package. This appears to be a business address. Mr. Maxwell's LinkedIn page lists his title as founder and CEO at Legacy Youth Leadership. A business search on the California Secretary of State website confirmed that this is an active nonprofit whose agent is listed as Seth Maxwell, with the address as 5478 Wilshire Boulevard, Suite 400, Los Angeles, California, 90036. The Secretary of State website has Seth Maxwell's voter registration with the status of active as of 1/13/2023 for Los Angeles County at 5478 Wilshire Boulevard, Suite 400 as well. The website for the Legacy Youth Leadership also lists 5478 Wilshire Boulevard, Suite 400 as its address. The appellant is listed as the founder of the Thirst Project, which is listed with the California Secretary of State as a nonprofit corporation. The Thirst Project website has Mr. Maxwell as the founder, and the address, again, is 5478 Wilshire Boulevard, Suite 400. Another listed address of interest is 846 South Dunsmuir, Los Angeles, California, 90036. This is a private home that may be a rental. This property is approximately three-tenths of a mile from the office at 5478 Wilshire Boulevard. Public records show that Mr. Maxwell made a political donation to a candidate from this address on October 26 of 2016. The California Secretary of State website lists Blaze and Glaze as a company registered at 846 South Dunsmuir, Los Angeles, California, with the agent listed as Seth Maxwell. The initial filing with the Secretary of State for this California company was on 2/27 of 2022. It was terminated on 5/31 of 2022. The filing date is 2 years after the appellant acquired 2109 Hermosa Street and almost 16 months after the owner-occupied permit was issued. I was unable to find a website for this company. The Seth Maxwell Company mentioned in the complaint is listed with the California Secretary of State as the Seth Maxwell Company, LLC. It was listed on 5/11/2015, remains active. The principal, mailing, and agent addresses for this company are all 13024 Delano Street, Van Nuys, California, 91401. This is a private residence 12 miles from the 5478 Wilshire Boulevard address. There are 6 photos in the case file for the address. The photos from Google Maps captured in September 2022, where the person in the photo bears a strong resemblance to the appellant. One photo is an interior room photo from 12/24/21, and one poolside photo from 2/14/22 posted on the appellant's Instagram account, and the matching photo for each from Zillow's listing for the address. I was unable to find a website for this company. The website link in the complaint is for Manta Marketing Company. The Manta listing for the Seth Maxwell Company describes it as theatrical producers and services. On June the 10th of 2021, the appellant acquired 57846 Hidden Gold Drive, Yucca Valley, California, 92284. Due to the California Government Code, Section 6254.21, official documents do not contain the owner name and address. Instead, they have the parcel number and name together. The following evidence will tie the owner, parcel number, and address together. San Bernardino County Assessor records records the purchase of parcel 058861204000 by Seth Maxwell on June the 10th of 2021. The legal description of this parcel is tract 7594, lot 44, tract number 7594, Sky Harbor Rancheros and Estates, unit number 6, lot 44. San Bernardino County Recorder Clerk records the purchase of the same parcel number to Seth Maxwell on June the 10th of 2021. The aerial photo of the parcel on this website shows the property location, and there are 4 photos included in your package. The County of San Bernardino map data imagery for 57846 Hidden Gold Drive, Yucca Valley, California, has the aerial photo of the address before the house was built, and the legal description is the same as above. Tract 57594, lot 44, tract number 7594, Sky Harbor Rancheros and Estates, unit number 6, lot 44. There's 1 photo. Google Maps aerial photos of the address match the aerial photos of the parcel. 3 photos included in your package. Mr. Maxwell's Instagram account is almost all from Southern California, mostly Los Angeles, with 1 notable exception seen earlier in the photos of the post for 13024 Delano Street, Van Nuys. The photo was posted while in Nashville, but is the poolside photo taken from that address. Included are several examples of posts from Mr. Maxwell's Instagram account. The first page is from 7/14/2021. The post reads, "I am 33 years old and have lived in Los Angeles for 14 years. The second is from 4/22/2022, and the post caption reads, "Seth Maxwell 1, Los Angeles, California." The post itself reads, "One of the most sacred parts of my weekend routine is sunrise hike in Malibu, celebrating the beauty of this planet on Earth Day." The next 9 screenshots range in dates from August 13th, 2022 back to February 14th of 2022, all in California. In total, I found 6 posts from Nashville, but could not determine if any were taken here. Most were not. I took the findings to the zoning administrator for review, and based upon the evidence gathered, he said to revoke the permit. The revocation letter was sent out on October 25th of 2022. By law, the Codes Department is required to give 15 days notice before the revocation goes into effect. Therefore, the revocation went into effect on November the 10th of 2022. On November the 17th of 2022, the ad remained posted with the November review. The calendar could be booked for less than 30 nights. Inspector Phelps went to the property and posted a stop work order and a copy of the revocation letter and made photos. On November 18th of 2022, the ads were removed. At some point later, the Airbnb ad was reposted with a minimum 30-night stay required. December the 6th of 2022, the STRP appeal was filed. Inspector Phelps visited the property, which has no garage, several times after the appeal was filed, and made photos that are included in your packet, and never saw a car at the property. The property is rented regularly, and Granicus host compliance tracking has 65 documented stays as of January 11, 2023, and the Airbnb website had 65 reviews. Mr. Maxwell may be a fine young man, but the department's belief, based on the evidence we could gather, is that 2109 Hermosa Street, Nashville, Tennessee 37208 is not his primary or principal residence. This is a very important legal requirement to obtain an owner-occupied STRP permit in a residential zone district in Metro Nashville. Subsequent to the completion of this case summary, a petition was received by the Metro Codes Department, which was emailed to the STR board members on January 23rd, 2023. The claims in the petition stand on their own merit. They have not been substantiated by the Metro Codes Department.
Does that complete the city's presentation?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Maxwell, you may come forward to the podium. And just a quick word about the microphone. You'll only need to press once to activate and then once to turn it off. Should you press it twice, it will require all the microphones to be reset, so try to avoid pressing it more than once. Perform whatever desired action. You'll press the, there is a little icon of a person with magnifying signs next to it. You'll press that once to activate and then once to close the microphone. And as Mr. McBroom stated, you'll have 10 minutes.
Right now.
Yes. Go ahead. And please do provide your name and address before you begin. Thank you.
Yes.
As a reminder, Mr. Maxwell, reserve any time for rebuttal.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name is Seth Maxwell from 2109 Hermosa Street, Nashville, Tennessee, 37208. Thank you very much. I understand the Metro's concern and the community concern, and my primary objective today was to show up to give respect to this board, but also to clear my name of, honestly, many false and misleading assertions made in the report that I just received on Friday and here today, and to avoid any threats to my reputation. I want to be as transparent as possible, but based on that packet, I think some explanation is required that I think would really help the board understand my situation. If I gave you just a little bit of background, when I was 19, I started a nonprofit organization that has built water, sanitation, and hygiene projects around the world in developing communities to provide people dying from waterborne diseases with safe, clean water. I say that, the reason I'm sharing that is because this organization requires me to travel sometimes up to 60% of the year. The organization is incorporated in Los Angeles, but is and has operated entirely remotely since 2020. I've been to the office listed in the investigative report fewer than 10 times in the last 3 years. I'm not here to convince you that I am a normal resident where I'm in Nashville or any one place 365 days of the year or even half of a year. I'm not anywhere that much time. But that's because, like I said, I'm not a traditional resident. I made over 60 flights last year to 7 countries, over 20 different cities. I'm not a traditional homeowner where I'm anywhere the majority of the time because I don't live like that. My work requires me to travel all the time. And it's true, I spent my 20s based in California, but it's also true that I grew up in Indiana, and when I got to 2019, I was on the road something like 34 weeks of the year, and I missed my family. I wanted to put down roots, move somewhere where I could buy a house. I've always loved Nashville. My best friend lives here, the vice president of the same organization that the report ties me to at that address on Wilshire Boulevard lives here. Our board chair lives here. And in February 2020, I found the house on Hermosa Street and bought my first house. It was my intention to become more like an average resident, to slow down, live the majority of my time here, but nobody could have predicted what would happen with the pandemic. COVID upended my plans. I slowly set up the house, but my plans of a slower life in one place got frustrated. And I did what anyone would do when I couldn't be here, which I rented it. I didn't know at that point if either organization that I was leading at the time, Thirst Project or Legacy, would keep existing. And even though I don't occupy the property as much as I'd like to, it's my first home I ever bought. I'm registered and only vote in Tennessee. I don't have a car registered to myself in any state. I surrendered my California license in 2020. All of my bank accounts, all of my credit cards, W-2s, taxes have been here since 2020. My personal website, which the report said it couldn't find, lists me as a resident here. I can't afford to leave the house empty when I travel for work. It is sometimes empty when I travel, but I try for it not to be so. But it has been my primary residence, but I travel a lot. It made sense when I travel to rent it. When I'm away, it is my intention to return. It's true, the organizations I lead are incorporated in California and were originally founded there. By nature, a lot of organizational activities from fundraising to events require my attendance in that space. but it's fully been my intention to get back here when I'm in those operations. And it's been incredibly difficult the last several years for every nonprofit, but the demands of my job have me in different states an enormous amount of time. My living situation is not the same as any other resident of any other state. I get that. But based on my review of Tennessee and Nashville residency requirements, I didn't know there was a minimum number of days required in one space to be a resident. I may have been mistaken, but I am here a substantial amount of the time compared to other places as well. And I spent all of my 20s dedicated to not pursuing conventional corporate American norms to take as much as I could, but to try to give back. I was taken off guard when my permit was revoked. I hadn't ever received any complaints. I am really good friends with my neighbors across the street. There have been no noise complaints. It's never overcrowded. It's not a party house. I think most would agree I'm a model neighbor. I've built a strong community with dozens of friends here, and there have never been any problems. But this packet of results reported here today, as well as the 2 opposition letters received, contain a lot of information. I would say 80–90% that mischaracterizes my situation, is outdated, and in several cases points to evidence that's over a decade or almost too old that predate the purchase of the house, and is either entirely incorrect or untrue. It's misleading and it lacks context, and if you're happy to, I can point out some glaring examples of this. If I've been out of alignment with the spirit of any regulation, it was never to my knowledge, and if I've been out of alignment with the letter of any ordinance or regulation, I certainly never intentionally meant to be out of compliance with either. At this point, I am happy to either address some of those specific points or answer questions, or I know I was supposed to leave time. I've also never been in a hearing like this before, so I don't know. I didn't know how it was going to go.
Yeah, I was about to ask that of the city. How much time does Mr. Maxwell? 3.5 minutes. Yeah, it's up to you whether to reserve the balance of that time for rebuttal once we've heard from the opposition, or to continue speaking.
I'll reserve it. Okay. And then I think there are some, like I said, 80–90% of the report, there are specific examples that state how it is inaccurate or outdated that I would be happy to address.
Okay.
Correction, there's 3 minutes and 50 seconds remaining.
3 minutes and 50 seconds. Okay, so you're reserving the remainder of that time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. If the opposition would like to approach the podium, yes, you can go ahead and turn that off. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. If you wouldn't mind identifying yourself and providing your address for us. You do need to turn the mic on, yes, so that we can hear you. Just press the icon once. There you go.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Reverend Dr. Paula Smith, Senior Pastor of Gordon Memorial United Methodist Church, 2234 Herman Street in Nashville, which is 1 street over from Hermosa. We've been in the neighborhood for over 146 years. We've seen the neighborhood change. We are very open and welcome to our neighbors and believe that we can be a bridge builder between our old and new neighbors. I have served in cross-racial appointments before. I think I'm very equipped to not only deal with the neighbors who are African Americans, but then also our new neighbors that are coming in. One of the ways we've done that, we had the past 2 years, National Night Out Against Crime in partnership with Metro, Police Department, Sheriff's Department. We had over 15 nonprofits. It was just a block party, dancing in the streets. It was just totally amazing. But today I come to petition this protest, in petition of the protest. What we would like to state, and I did send in, I hope you received, that we had signatures signed against, and I have some additional signatures as well, opposing the Airbnbs that is inundating our community. We did a prayer walk and got out to meet the neighbors and was totally surprised by the total number of Airbnbs that are in our community. And so, therefore, this is the primary reason why we are against it. You give me a moment. The primary reason why we are in opposition to this, what we have noticed in the neighborhood is that it is an area that there's partying, there's violence. You may have heard of the recent violence that is occurring. We have just a couple of weeks ago, Sunday morning, awakened to beer cans and trash all over the parking lot. Many of these Airbnbs, the area is very congested, so our parking lot becomes a place for people to come and to hang out and park, even though we have signs that said private property, do not park. As a church, we don't want to be that unwelcome neighbor. We want to be welcoming, but when we have you coming up, trashing the property, and then we have to clean up the area before you can even come in, that becomes a problem for us. So because of those reasons, because the rentals, many of the rentals, and I'm not quite sure, I can't speak about this particular one, but we are within 1,000 feet of it. I can't speak to the noise. We're not there on Saturday evenings most times. But the weddings, people are coming in for partying, creating congestion, the undesirable littering and the havoc, and as I stated, also sometimes violence. For that reason, it is our desire to oppose any appeal of the current zoning laws now or in the future in our community. And then I have the list of names. There are, in that particular area, down the street, one way is one church. There are 4 churches that are in a very close area, and I have spoken to those pastors, and we intend to, going forward, to come together and to stand against any more short-term rentals in our community. And that's all I have. Along with me, I would also state is Reverend Robert Jordan, who is a retired pastor who grew up in the neighborhood. So if you would like to speak to what it was like growing up in the neighborhood and how the changes that he has seen as he prepares to come, as I say, we're not opposed to progress. We're not opposed to growth. We believe in all God's children, red, brown, yellow, black, and white. So it's not a racial thing. And we believe we are positioned to be bridge builders between the old and the new neighbors.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Jordan, 7213 Santilla Way, Antioch, Tennessee. I am retired clergy from the Tennessee Conference of United Methodist Church. I entered into ministry through Gordon Memorial, United Methodist Church, 2334 Herman Street. Also, I was born in this zip code, it's 1,000 feet away there at Meharry Medical College. And so I've lived in the community, I've worked in the community, I was educated in the community from Moses McKissick School to Tennessee State University. And I guess the greatest concern I have is just preserving and protecting the integrity of the community, because we have a lot of children. And so we want to make sure that we offer a safe space, not only inside the church walls, but we consider the church the people, so it's the community. And we want to preserve that and make sure to do all that we can to keep the children and youth safe. And you can see in times how things are changing. And so that's all I have to say. Just protect our children.
Thank you both.
Thank you all.
Mr. Maxwell, if you have any rebuttal testimony, you'll have 3 minutes and 50 seconds, I believe, to provide that.
I think there were 2 opposition letters that I received. One was the petition from Gordon Memorial United.
Sir, I apologize for interrupting you, Mr. Maxwell. I just wanted to check, is anybody else in the audience here to speak on this case? Thank you so much. I apologize for interrupting, sir.
No, I'm sorry. I was deeply disheartened by the petition in particular, because at the beginning, when it states who I am and who it's referencing, it's simply untrue, and it's very different than the account that was just presented here today. It's completely false to say that I own 2 parcels that I'm developing across from their church parking lot, which it states in the letter, which has the same signatures. It's clear, I think, even now that we've never spoken before. There was never any attempt to engage with me personally, and the Reverend clearly didn't know who I am, but yet goes on at the very beginning of the petition to list my address and describe the types of people that it says have stayed at my home, which at worst felt like providing, false information to cause damage, or at least there was no attempt to get to know each other. My mom is a pastor at a church in Indiana. I've been on staff at a church. I feel like it's just a really disappointing letter to receive. And I know the Metro did a thorough investigation into addresses associated and tied to me, but that's clearly not who I am, and not who I was, and not what my place is. That's really the only rebuttal I have for that. I could use the rest of the time to address any specific. There are a lot of specific errors in this report that are simply untrue. I don't know if...
That is your right if you choose to do so. We'll have questions after you've completed your presentation, but however you'd like to use the balance of your time is up to you.
Sorry, I've never done this before. So you'll have questions that I'll answer after that.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a question.
Oh, no. If you want to address what you perceive as inaccuracies in the report, then you may do so now with the remainder of your time. We'll have questions of our own once you've completed your testimony.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The questions by the board will be separate from your time. So go ahead and you have 2 minutes and 5 seconds to address any discrepancies.
Okay. I said earlier when the report references that I don't have a vehicle registered here, that's true. That's because I don't own or have a vehicle registered to me in any state. It's easy to find that, I imagine, with any search in Los Angeles or the different addresses that they try to tie me to. There are, I think, 5 or 6 different addresses listed in the report, from Dunsmuir Avenue to Alta Loma Terrace to Point View Street. All of those were leases that I had to enter into as an agent of an organization. They were corporate leases, not for me. And I have those leases here. I didn't distribute them in advance because I didn't know how this would go or how far we would get, but I can share those if you would like, that clearly demonstrate that their leases made between me as an agent of a space. We have leases at offices in Eswatini in Southern Africa and Uganda that no more tie me as a resident of those places than these do. As I said about the office address and the distances that are cited between it and the others, the organization both organizations are and have operated entirely remotely for the last 3 years, and I've been into them less than 10 times. It's true that I just bought a property in Yucca Valley in June of last year, but I do not and have not lived there. I haven't rented it either. I have been doing renovations on it, rehabilitating it. I love the area. I love Joshua Tree and hope to spend more time there in the future. But the website that it says in the report was unable to be found for the Seth Maxwell Company is the first, if you type in my name, it's the first website to come up. And there are screenshots that I shared from that website with you there for Seth Maxwell, which talks about me. As for the Instagram audit, it's true, there are fewer, though, than 2 posts per month to that page, which I'm happy to provide documentation for the team member who helps prepare and post all of the permanent posts that live on my Instagram page. But there are multiple carousels with photos from other countries in them.
Your time has expired, sir.
That's the conclusion of your time. I'm sure the board members will have some questions. I certainly have some myself. And if no one has an immediate question, I'm happy to begin. Mr. Maxwell, is Foremost Insurance Company still the insurer for the property at 2109 Hermosa?
It is one of, yes.
One of. So given that you live there, it's a little surprising to see that in the occupancy field it says vacation and short-term rental, not instead of primary residence. Can you explain why that's the case and if you updated it since then?
Yes, sir. I haven't updated it from the first time that I purchased the house. I had a regular homeowner's insurance policy, but my understanding when I applied for the permit for short-term rental was that I had to get dedicated coverage for that. So it's a completely separate policy that is only for that.
Okay. Do you have a copy of the policy for that just covers your residential occupancy?
I didn't bring one, but I can easily email or provide it to the board.
Also, with regard to I noticed that you provided a couple of W-2s from 2020 and 2021. I noticed that you didn't provide your tax returns as additional support for the fact that you live at this property. Why is that the case?
I didn't know that I needed to. I apologize. I can happily do so easily.
Okay. And then the Chase Bank statement that you provided, it covers the period from March 24th of 2020 through April the 22nd of 2020. The complaint was filed much later in time after that, and the investigation was open, and then the revocation was instituted much later in time after that. Why would you not have provided us something that was a bit more current to show that you actually have ties to this particular property? Because all that we see on the document itself is that your address, the address associated with the account is 2109 Hermosa.
So I know that the report just listed a handful of documents that I had to submit when applying for the permit, like a driver's license and bank statements. So the reason I provided the support was to demonstrate that they're actually not just the one bank statement or type of bank statement that I used when I applied, but there actually is the company as well as my personal one, as well as credit card statements. And the reason I went further back was to attempt to demonstrate that I didn't just randomly today or this year switch my bank account. I thought, again, I've never done this before, but I thought it would have been helpful to demonstrate the longer standing history of those accounts being switched over from the beginning versus what I guess I perceived would have been to look like I was changing it today. But I can also provide current ones. I just didn't provide every bank statement. I tried to provide one at the beginning of the year or end of those years to sort of demonstrate that period of time. And I didn't print everything else because I was trying to save paper because there was already a lot of paper being printed.
Thank you. Board members?
Thank you for being here today. Are you a regular voter?
Yes, sir. Well, yes, in presidential elections.
Did you vote in the midterms, the 22 midterms?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm just curious because we have in our packet, there's voter registration it appears to be active as of the 23rd in Los Angeles County, California. And then we also have documentation that you submitted of an active voter registration in Tennessee at this address. So I guess where was the last place you voted? Yeah, so that's actually why that was one of the next points I was going to get to. But that's actually why I submitted that, was because I don't know why the Metro report didn't also include in their search my voter registration here. To be totally transparent, I thought when you bought a house and surrendered a California driver's license and registered to vote and then vote I've never deregistered to vote somewhere, so I was unaware that I was actively registered somewhere else. But my registration with the state is from back in 2020, and the last election I voted in, period, anywhere, was in 2020, and I've not voted in California since then, since before then. Okay, thanks.
So in 2020, you voted in California, period?
No, I didn't vote in California. I voted here.
In 2020, you voted here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How often were you in Nashville in 2020?
That was probably the year I traveled the least of anywhere because of the beginning of the pandemic. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I would have to go back and actually calculate an exact number.
Okay, 2 or 3 weeks out of all of 2020.
Yes.
How often were you in Nashville in 2021?
I don't know, ma'am.
Give me your best estimate.
4 to 5 weeks.
In the last 6 months, how many times have you been in Nashville?
2 or 3 times for periods of a week or so each.
Did you stay at the house each time?
Yes, ma'am.
In the last 6 months, what percentage of your time did you spend in California?
30% of my time if I had to guess. If I may, I am in many states all the time. I mean, throughout the course of that
I
same period.
understand, but the question is, how much time do you spend here?
Yeah.
So tell me, the last taxes that you filed, where did you file them?
Here.
In Tennessee.
Yes, ma'am.
What year was that? Which tax year?
It was last year for the previous tax year before, so it would have been 2021.
Where did you file your 2020 taxes?
Here.
Tell me about the July 2021 Instagram post that says, I've lived in LA for 14 years.
So, again, with regard to the whole Instagram page entirely, I post almost every day to my Instagram story, but there are fewer than 2 posts per month on that. And that one post that's specifically cited was posted not by me, but by one of our team members who
Who wrote the caption?
Kristen de Guzman.
Did you approve the caption?
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me about the wording that says, I've lived in LA for 14 years.
I would say that it was a careless oversight in caption.
How often do you update your LinkedIn profile?
Almost never.
Does Ms. Kristen update your LinkedIn for you as well?
I don't really think hardly anyone does.
Are you aware that your LinkedIn profile says that you're located in LA?
I thought that it said that the organizations were located in Los Angeles.
Tell me about serving as a registered agent for Legacy Youth Leadership International. It lists you as the registered agent with an LA address. What's the LA address for the registered agent?
It's the address that the report mentioned for the office on Wilshire Boulevard.
Okay, and that is an office that you say nobody really goes to. You've been 10 times, is that what you said in the last 2 years?
Yes, ma'am. So at the beginning of 2020, that office was significantly downsized and has been used almost entirely for storage and to receive mail, where our office administrator goes in. She's the only person, though.
Other than the property in Joshua Tree and the property here, what other properties do you own?
None.
That's it for now.
Okay. Other questions?
Just to follow on with that, your percentage wise, you mentioned that you travel approximately 34 weeks out of the state.
That was in 2019. I was on the road almost 34 weeks of the year.
So on the average, there's 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks here per year since then.
Yes, sir.
I just have one question. You mentioned you don't have any vehicles. Do you have a driver's license?
Yes, sir.
And what's the address on your driver's license?
2109 Hermosa Street.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, if there are no more questions, then we will close the public hearing and go into deliberation.
Thank you.
Board, if I may, out of fairness, we did have a member of the community show up in support of Mr. Maxwell. Unfortunately, his time has expired, so she will not be able to testify.
I do apologize. We weren't able to hear from the party who appeared in support. And we'll now go into deliberation with all that we've heard.
This is well within this board. If you wish to hear from his witness, I think it's fair to grant him a little bit of time and to cover, just so we get it on the record.
If we have discretion to hear and grant them a certain allotment of time, that would be fine with me if it's fine with the rest of the board.
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Perfect. Who's the party that's here in support? If you'd like to come forward, please. Actually, to the table. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
did you want to allow a lot of time?
2 minutes. And if you will press the button on the right side of the microphone, it should activate. It looks like a person with little sound waves on the right side.
All right.
And if you'll give us your name and your address, please, before you begin speaking.
Pamela Harris Davis, 2102 Hermosa Street.
Please go ahead.
Yes, I've known Seth, I guess, about 3 years now. And I look out after his, property while he's gone. But he's over there at least about 4 times a year. Mm-hmm. And when he comes, he stays, like a week or 2 at a time. He's a very good neighbor, respectful. The tenants that he have in his home are very respectful. And he really takes care of his property. And I make sure that the residents take care of his property also. If there's any problems, anything going on, I'll call him. Or if there's anything that he want to know about his property, I would, let him know about it. But he's on top of everything.
Is that all you'd like to say?
I pray that he would be able to keep his Airbnb because it's no problem with me. Because, see, I look out, for everybody on, whatever neighborhood I live in. I try to, look out, after, everybody's property, which some people say I'm nosy or whatever. They could call it whatever they want to. But I've always been like that everywhere I go. Try to, look out after other people, whether they want to look out after me or not. I don't care. But Seth, he's a real good neighbor. He's a real good friend. He's my son. He called me mom. I call him son. Yeah, that's what kind of relationship we have built. And I've met his family, and my family have met him.
Understood. And that is unfortunately all of your time. But thank you so much for appearing and giving us your feedback.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, having heard from all parties, we will now go into deliberations. I just didn't say I'm loud enough that everyone can hear me. I just don't see enough evidence to rebut what's in the city's packet. And I think that even with the admissions that were made here, while certainly there may be intent to use it as a primary residence, I don't think the time spent here amounts to this is a primary residence. And it's also difficult for me to overcome what appears on the insurance application. And I think the burden's on the appellant to come prepared. If there's additional documentation that would supplement our understanding or correct our misunderstanding, if that's the case, then the burden's on the appellant to provide that timely so that we can consider it.
By his own admission, he's in LA or California 20 to 30% of the time.
Right.
And if he's been here in the last 6 months 2 to 3 times for a total of 2 weeks,
yeah,
the intent may be to use it as a primary residence, but I'm not sure it has been used as a primary residence.
I would agree.
So with the standard where we are, just as whether or not the zoning administrator erred, I agree with you, Mr. Chair, that there's not enough here that would tell me that they erred in making their decision.
I agree.
I agree with that sentiment. I mean, I think that though there's not a specific, some cities have like a specific number of days that to qualify as an owner occupant, you need to reside there. my sense is if we did have such a regulation in Nashville, it would be significantly higher than what we understand the situation to be with Mr. Maxwell, who by all accounts is a great neighbor and everything else. But I'm not seeing enough evidence to counter the zoning administrator's determination that this is not a primary residence.
I tend to agree, well, with your assessment, but also the fact that owner-occupied permits, to get one, you have to be there 50% of the time, live there. And I had one. It used to be rough getting back and forth and making sure that I was there. And I was on my own. I know, I mean, no one's out there looking for it, but we had to do that. And if you're not there, I would think that I was surprised. I was surprised you didn't apply for a non-owner occupied permit, which we wouldn't be here. But
Mike, anything from you?
I echo the same.
Okay. Is there a motion then?
Make a motion that we find that the zoning administrator did not err in revoking Mr. Maxwell's permit.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All
Chairman,
in favor?
Vote. Let me, for the record, I want to clarify a statement Member Hogan said. There's not a 50% threshold under our code. That is part of this issue I have as zoning administrator in determining residency. There's not a minimum amount of stay required for that. There is case law in Tennessee that talks about domicile, and the person has it until they get rid of it and establish another. But I do want to correct the record, especially if there's an appeal coming out of this. To be fair to the applicant, there's not a minimum 50% threshold to be that. So I just want to be sure to get that on the record.
I think that in looking at, just for our purposes of discussion and our record that we are making, if Mr. Maxwell has been here for 2 weeks out of the last 6 months, and his wonderful neighbor who showed up today, and they clearly have a great relationship, if he's here 4 to 5 times a year, a week at a time,
right,
that's still potentially 1 month out of the entire year,
right,
in the house.
Yes. Yeah, there's no reasonable argument to be made that that's primary, and it may be that you don't have a primary residence due to the nature of your work, but you certainly can't claim that this property is that.
If there's not a primary residence, something other than an owner-occupied permit,
right,
as
would be
Mr. Hogan
appropriate.
pointed out, would
Absolutely,
be appropriate.
and I just think that I want to make clear for all who are listening that we are basing the decision today on the evidence before us, not evidence that could have been presented, not supposition, not anything else other than what is in Metro's record, and then the rebuttal evidence that we were provided today. None of which is sufficient to overcome
the standard that we're asked to evaluate today, which is whether or not there's an error.
Absolutely. So we'll return to the motion. I believe that there was a motion on the floor, and was there a second?
I seconded.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Looks to be unanimous. Mr. Maxwell, your request for relief is denied. Thank you.
Oh, we didn't have a second case? Were they bumped or what? Can we let the folks in the audience know that?
For members of the public may be present, our agenda was published with case 2022-51 regarding 610 Vester Avenue. If you're here for that case, the appellant has withdrawn their appeal of the revocation of the permit, challenging my interpretation of principal dwelling. So if you're here for that case, I know there's more folks here than the people that testified for Mr. Maxwell's case. So I just want to be sure if you're here for that one on Vester, that case will not be heard today.
And if I could just ask staff, could we, it might have been said before I arrived because I was a couple minutes late, if we could make sure to just review and let folks know any withdrawals or deferrals that we anticipate on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
Yes, sir. Actually, I checked with the members of the public in attendance to see if anyone was here for that case.
Thank you, sir.
All right. If there's no other business before the board, no one will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Then we'll stand adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.